Welcome to a new discovery journey beyond perception. My name is Simon, and I'm very excited to welcome Katie Park as my guest today. And Katie, to introduce you briefly, you are a long-term practitioner of Zen for, I believe, more than 20 years. You received inka, which is the permission to teach, in 2016, and you're now a Dharma master and co-guiding teacher for Zen groups in Korea, but also the co-guiding teacher and coordinator of Kwan Um Zen Online. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, but where you are bringing online Zen teaching and support to practitioners worldwide. It is my great joy to be here with you. Welcome, Katie.
Thank you, Simon, for your invitation. And that was the best short, clear introduction I heard of me. So you're great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I'm very happy to be here.
Likewise. Yeah, thank you for accepting the invitation. Maybe as a start, what I would be curious to hear, how and why did you start practicing Zen?
How I started and why?
If you remember.
Suffering is
yeah.
why. So, yeah, suffering is our best, I would say, medicine to wake up. So Zen means understanding my true self. What am I? I think all of us in some way, if we come to any spiritual tradition or have a curiosity about, our life, or have an existential dilemma, inside the root of it is a question. What is my life for? Like, why was I born? Things like that, right? So my background is in fine art. I was trying to be a sculptor, in university. So when I look back, I realized I was not very good at articulating verbally. I was just better at perceiving the world through, color, sound, senses. So sculpture, the plastic arts were my love. I love drawing. I love seeing the world through color and seeing, artists' work, the work of other people that are expressions of their mind through, a painting or a drawing or a piece of sculpture or music or any of the arts that, express to us the nature of human mind, but also their feelings, their experiences. So I think when I was like, in university, I remember looking at a very famous exhibition of Van Gogh's paintings that came to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. And I was going to school in New York at the time. And we were going through these, rooms for hours of all of Van Gogh's paintings. And he has these famous paintings of the yellow room where he was sitting, bright colors. And at the end of the tour of the exhibition, I had such a big headache because those colors were so bright and crazy. Okay, and I was like, I had this thought in my head, like, how can I be a great artist? Like, I didn't suffer enough. There's so much suffering in those paintings that I could feel and experience. And I think at the end of school, the question I was left with was, why do I make art? What's your impetus for making art? But that question sort of started to grow, get deeper and bigger and, kind of more persistent, but without an answer as my life went on. And of course, then, you go on with your life with, trying different things, trying to make money, trying to have relationships and, and then that question just gets bigger and bigger. So finally I understood, what is suffering? Not so good. So one time I was actually in a car accident in California on the 101 freeway, which is the oldest highway in Los Angeles. It's called the Pasadena Freeway, and it's like a winding highway. And I wasn't driving, but I was in the car and the car flipped. And we kind of skidded down about 50 meters upside down. But I had my seatbelt on. So fortunately, we got out of the car and I was unscathed. I had only like a small nick on my elbow and nothing else. But if you looked at the car was completely destroyed. And you would think, who survived this? Not possible. So as we were waiting for the police, to come, I remember, obviously it was a bit of a trauma, if you get into a car accident. So I was standing there on the side of the road with the cars running on the freeway, keep going in front of me. And I remember looking up at the sky, and it was a bright, beautiful blue California sky, in the middle of the day. And this thought in my mind was, why am I alive? Because I looked at the car and I thought, I should be dead, but I'm alive. And then it was such a huge revelation, like there's a reason I'm alive, but it never occurred to me until that moment. So, and this is still way before I really started to search for anything such as religion or spirituality. I wasn't interested in any of that, But that was a very significant moment in my life where what happens is, of course, it is something that happens if you go through trauma, but a part of it is very similar when you really wake up, like you were saying, Simon, you realize my life is not what I thought it was.
That was
and
very shocking.
What was that, right? So it's like a dream. It's like waking up from a dream. And so you see that dream of the past, which is gone, but there's a shadow of that dream that still stays with us. And we think we're awake, but even this moment is a dream. So when I finally discovered what is Zen meditation and the teachings of Zen Buddhism, I realized, oh, it's understanding the waking up from this dream. And then this path became very clear for me as a spiritual journey. So, one thing led to another, and I met a group of practitioners suddenly, and it was, starting to happen. So I did a retreat years ago in my first Zen retreat in London. And at that time, I realized when I sat in a meditation hall with 20 other people that I didn't know at all personally, but we sat in silence for 5 days, sitting 10 hours a day, doing the same thing, 50-minute sitting, 10-minute walking, 50-minute sitting, 10-minute walking, eating in silence. That experience really opened up this understanding of, I needed to stop and wake up from this dream and then realize that everybody else can also wake up from their dream. But we're all in the dream all the time. So Zen means to wake up. And so ever since then, I keep trying to wake up moment to moment. And I still go back to sleep and go back to the dream. But we keep trying. So,
so
it's a work in progress, I would say.
Thank you so much. In one sense, you already answered that question, but I ask you anyway, like when you now look back over all those years of practicing Zen, how did your life or your perception on life or yourself, if it did, change over those years of practicing?
All the years of practicing are burned up in an instant. So I would say, it's very easy to stop practicing. sometimes we can have an experience like, one day you could have like an aha moment, or, one day you have an experience like, I'm one with the universe. Wow. You get this blissful state. And there are many, many ways we can experience something unique, whatever that means. But when I say Zen means to wake up, it means to really wake up to all the illusions that we create in our mind. So even practicing Zen, if we attach to it, it becomes a dream, a Zen dream. Then it's not so useful. It's a dead dream, right? So we can get kind of caught up in, oh, I'm a Zen practitioner or I'm a Buddhist. But we're not really waking up. We're still attaching to some idea of what it means to get enlightenment or wake up or be a Buddhist or be a spiritual person. So the point of Zen training is to wake up from any kind of attachment moment to moment to moment. But it doesn't mean, you leave your spouse or or you don't eat chocolate cake anymore ever because that's bad for you. It's not about that. It's not about cutting out everything, which is your life, or making drastic changes and becoming an ascetic person. That's not the point of it. The point of it is, how much do you attach to anything which arises in your mind, or that you say or hear, or that you do as an action, or interact in the world, right? Or have experiences in situations and relationships. So if we attach to them, they become a hindrance for us. But if we see them for what they are, which is the truth, that's what the Buddha taught, is perceive the truth, see clearly the truth, then finding that correct function of truth is what we call correct life. So that's why I say, it's easy to think about, oh, I've been practicing for so many years, but holding on to that has no meaning, because a student one time asked our teacher, Zen Master Musangsa, if somebody practices 20 years and they stop, what's the difference? If with that and somebody who just sat for a week or tried it a few times and quits. And he says, quitting is all the same. But try 10,000 years nonstop, life after life. That's what matters.
I from my own experience, the mind seems to have the tendency of wanting to orientate itself. How is it? How does that work? And kind of continuously building concepts with all what we are picking up. And then one might have a very amazing experience and, wow, that's how it is. And then somehow the mind starts like incorporating that into another, like maybe more truthful concept, but it is still a concept. So how is your perspective on that? From what I'm listening to, on the one hand, you're saying it's about waking up, but then also we're still continuously falling back into the dream. So it's it is like, is it like, and maybe to use another word, very often you hear people or even teacher talk about enlightenment, and then one starts putting that in the mind together as, like when I reach that single point, that goal, like everything is done and I'm set.
Yeah, so that's the problem with language. Because language it's just coming out of our mouth, or we could type it or read it, right? But it's essentially linear. So linear means it's coming from thinking, conceptual thinking. So conceptual thinking is opposites world, right? So we're just basically looking at inside, outside, right or wrong, good or bad, high or low. Everything is opposites. But the dream world is opposites world, right? So Simon is sitting in Mexico with wings behind him, and I'm sitting here in Korea with a golden Buddha behind me, and it's 10:23 a.m. Korea time. So those are opposites, right? Right? Because we use concepts like time, space, name, and form. So that's the relative world that we call our life. But what happens if you jump out of that, right? So then words and speech cannot go there. So we say teaching. So Buddhist teaching in general has two parts. We call it exposition and practice. So instructions, guidance, how to do it, a map. So actually, you introduced me as a Dharma master, which is a bit embarrassing. The literal translation of our Inka title is Chido Popsanim in Korean, and it means the one who shows the way.
Okay,
the way. So instructions means how to do it, and then practice means you apply it. So Buddhism, and of course the practice of Zen is the heart training in Buddhism. It's the heart of the training of the Buddha, what the Buddha taught, to attain our true nature and become Buddha ourselves. Right? Wake up, become what he became. Because the name Buddha in Sanskrit means the awakened one. It's not a name for a god or a king or somebody special. It's really about a human being who really wakes up to his original nature. So when we can wake up, that means we understand that there's this opposites world. And in this opposites world where we live in, we also have our own desires, our own angers, and our ignorance. And that's where, I like this. I want to get enlightenment. Oh no, I want to keep that experience. It's lovely, it's blissful. I want to have it more and more and more. That's desire, but that's okay. We experience it. And the important thing is then what? What's next? How do you then go forward with that? Do we keep going after just blissful experiences? It's easy if you do it with drugs, but then what, right? Or you can have any kind of substances or hallucinogens or whatever that can bring you experiences. Even in those myriad experiences, they're still happening in our mind, right? So your experiences with a certain kind of medication or substance will be different from mine, right? Because we each have our own mental world. So if we attach to any of that which appears in our mind, then that attachment becomes a hindrance, even if it's called enlightenment or Zen or Buddhism or anything. So very important is how do you then return to this wake up moment? So it's beyond speech and words. So we teach that in Zen. That's a very important first step. We call it primary point. Primary point. Yeah. So language is like the classic Zen teaching analogies, using language to teach this thing, which is before thinking, before words, is like a finger pointing to the moon. So if you attach to the finger, you don't get anywhere. You have to see the moon yourself, right? Yeah, like that. So the Zen training means return to before thinking. Our teacher calls it don't know.
And that's exactly the tendency of the mind that does want to know, right? And would you say that from that point of view, concepts or teachings, they kind of like give a framework for the mind to relax, that you actually then can open up to an experience which is beyond that conceptual framework, which otherwise, like without any context, would be just like a too far of a step. I know that very well. I want to. I have a strong sense of wanting to know and to have some answers and the framework. No, it helps to feed my mind in one sense, and then when that's
right.
a little bit like fed, then I'm more at peace and tranquil, and like certain experiences are accessible, which otherwise would maybe for me be too far of a gap, like from where I am.
Sure. So let me ask you a question, Simon.
Okay, yeah.
I mentioned earlier that Zen means understanding our true self. So I want to ask you, what are you?
What I am. Yeah, that's a good question. I think I can't answer that. I don't know. Yeah,
don't know that. Correct.
I have no clue. Yeah,
correct.
It freaked the mind out. Yeah, I've searched very hard.
So maybe for a split, so maybe for a split of a second, you didn't have an answer, right? That was logical. Yeah. So so that's don't know. That's the beginning of don't know. We say that's the first step in Buddhism is accepting. It's actually a kind of very humble place in a way. It's like, okay, I really have no clue. Then what? Let's open our eyes. Let's open our ears. Let's truly smell. Let's taste, touch, open our mind and really see, yeah, what is this? Moment to moment to moment. So that, in a sense, deep curiosity of our life is the path of Zen. So my experience, and I often share this with many students, is that when people ask about is Zen a religion, I say, it's not a religion. It's actually a kind of science. You know, it's like a lifelong study of yourself, your own life journey. Yeah. So you are the researcher. You are the subject of research, of the dissection, of the experiments and failures. But in the end, okay, it's a study of one's own life and finding that life's path, the direction.
And when you see little children, they are still, like you just spoke about, curiosity. They're looking into the world very innocently.
Yes,
like at least, I don't know, the first year, 1.5 years, they not even have a sense of themselves, right? So, and then you could say, like, we introduced assumptions, concepts, perceptions, and like layer of assumptions about how things are is in front of our classes. Like, would you say that Zen is really about like clearing those assumptions or waking up from assumptions to have like a direct connection perspective?
Yeah, in a sense, yes, that's very true. How you ask this question is very important because it's true that when we are born and we're infants, our mind, the human mind it's like a sponge. It doesn't have any filters. Like a child is born with this, it's like, it's a pure mind. Okay. So it's a pure mind, which means it doesn't have any filters of, like or dislike, good or bad, or opinions. And when the child grows up to about 6 years old, as we understand from child development or neurosciences, their kind of identity is completely formed. This I appears. So these first 6 years of a child's life is crucially important. And it's so important how a child is raised and cared for and taught in those 6 years. And of course, further on. So a baby is like absorbing everything, not just verbal language, but the mother's feelings, the warmth, the father's, energy, the people around the home, the, daily interactions of whatever is happening in this dream world for the child is absorbed like a sponge. So then as the child grows up and the identity of the self, the so-called delusion of self, I exist, we usually call it I, my, me. I and my situation, my condition, and me. So when you see a 5-year-old, 6-year-old child, it's all about me, or I want, or no. They're learning opposites in this world at that stage. So when we grow up, of course, the energy in our body from the baby, which the original energy of life force was in the belly area of the child, because the baby was getting all the nutrients and life energy from the mother through the umbilical cord. So we call it tanjun in Korean, or tantian in Chinese, which is used a lot in martial arts, Tai Chi, Taoist studies. They focus a lot of different exercises on this Tantian area. It's called energy garden. In Japanese, they call it hara, right? So in English, we often refer to it as the center because it's the exact middle from the top of our head to the bottom of our feet, if you measure where it is in our body. So this is the place of our, I would say, willpower, our ability to decide something and do it. So it's not a logic place, it's a believing in yourself place physically. You feel it in that place. So if this energy starts to move as we grow up, because we start thinking more, then the energy comes to our head. So then the intellectual energy center is, of course, in our brain. Emotional energy center is around the heart and lung area. So, of course, we feel the emotions through our chest, right? Whether it's sadness or happiness, it's usually felt at the central part of our heart area. And then thinking, of course, because of the prefrontal cortex, rational thinking is happening in our intellectual center. So unlike, the Vedic traditions, Zen is very simple. We only have 3 chakras: head chakra, heart chakra, and center. Very easy. We simplify. Okay. So when we practice Zen, what we do is your body energy, physical body energy, your lung and heart energy is expanded by correct breathing. And then your mind energy, which if you cut off your thinking, if you reduce the frequency of your thinking through meditation practices, then these 3 energies become one. Okay. Harmony of the physical energy within just the human body area. Okay. So if this is harmonious, then you have some thinking, but you're in charge of them. No problem. Okay. You make correct decision. You have some emotions, but you're able to use them. You're not, uprooted by them. You feel them. It doesn't mean you don't feel and you're dead and cold. It means you can feel anger, but it doesn't control you. You might feel grief or sadness, but you find ways to digest them, right? And you feel great love, great compassion, happiness, and joy. Then you use it, spread it to others, right? So correct thinking, correct emotions, then use it to do something with it comes from your center. That's a power. We call it power of conviction, okay? Courage to just do it. So you see many people do different things. They don't have to be religious people or spiritual people. They do something for someone else, for others in this moment. And we call that in Zen bodhisattva action. Okay, yeah. A selfless function for others. So for the kind of experience that we might have, let's say we can return to that experience of a childlike mind where you're open. So I said, it's pure. It just absorbs, a red ball comes, you just see red. You don't have this thought, I don't like red ball, I want green, right? That's a thinking idea, right? A green ball comes, you say, now it's green, okay? So there's no distinction of that. It's just pure perception. So we call that pure, but the one more step is necessary because an adult is no longer a 5-year-old child. So we need pure and clear. So Zen means have a pure and clear mind. Yeah, that means purity comes from seeing clearly the truth. Red ball, red. Green light, green, go, right? Clear means red light, stop. Green light can look left and right and go. That's wisdom. Okay, so it's correct what you said. It's returning to that mind which is not hindered by a lot of concepts and likes and dislikes and distinctions within our own consciousness. And then because of that clarity, you can function better in this truth world, okay, with whatever comes in front of you, a red ball or a green ball or a blue light or whatever it is. Yeah. So it's a correct function of human life. That's what we're aiming for. We call that Buddhahood. Almost there.
I take one of that, yeah. Before you said Zen is a science and not a religion. I think that's what you mentioned before.
Some people might argue about that with me, but yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess there are many misconceptions about Zen. I think you mentioned quite a few of them already, but maybe just to share your perspective towards maybe also people who are listening now, watching, and they might not have yet a context or understanding of Zen. What are differences to other spiritual practices, or what is very distinct about Zen?
Yeah, there are obviously many kinds of meditation techniques out in the world, right? Yeah. And some of those techniques are, techniques to be better at work, more productive, or for your health, right? Health and well-being. There are meditation techniques to improve our cognitive thinking even. There are techniques also to coincide with certain spiritual traditions like Buddhism. There's contemplations in Christianity and Islam. Hinduism has their own practices. So there's like lots of many techniques of what we will call in a wider spectrum meditation and contemplative practices. And usually what I would recommend is for anyone who is new and searching and looking to find a spiritual tradition or a method of working with their mind is to really look inside yourself, like, what do I want, right? So in Buddhism, we have broadly 3 big traditions. We have Theravadan tradition, which mainly uses the technique of vipassana. And mindfulness as a movement came out of the original training of vipassana meditation, which is still practiced a lot by many different traditions also in the West. Then there's Mahayana tradition. And Mahayana tradition includes like Tibetan traditions, right? And then there's a Zen tradition. Broadly, there's these three big traditions in Buddhism. Theravadan Buddhism, and this is a very simplistic way, for the sake of brevity and because of time, we will just kind of touch on it very lightly. In Theravadan Buddhism, the direction of meditating is to enter nirvana, extinction, we say. So their practice has a very clear outline of teachings and steps. So if you do Vipassana training, you have to find a teacher who's going to guide you along that way, right? To reach nirvana. That's their purpose. In Mahayana Buddhism, the purpose of any kind of practices, whether it's meditation or chanting or reading sutras, whatever they may be, the aim is to become bodhisattva. Bodhisattva is the word which means the one who is on the way to Buddhahood, right? We are on the way, and we all go together on this big boat, the Mahayana boat. So we don't exclude anyone, we include everybody. But there are many different levels of understanding and experiences. Not everybody all agrees, oh, yeah, I want to do this way, right? Some people, maybe they can't read. They can only chant, and they can't sit. Then they can only chant or recite, but cannot read sutras. So their practice can only be chanting. Some people only want to sit, then they don't want to do something else. So everybody has different, causes and conditions that have affinities and difficulties that affect the way they can relate to their practice. So Mahayana has many kinds of, bodhisattvas also to help you along, right? And teachings, a big canon of sutras as well. And Zen the purpose of Zen is to become Buddha. Okay, so that means understanding your true self. What am I? Not just our karma, not just my habits and what is good or bad or, in this life, but understand who is the boss of that? Who's the real master that drives this car called the human body, right? So that means understanding your true nature. That's the purpose of Zen. So there's a lot of teachings, obviously, even in the Zen tradition, that can be very helpful on our path of practicing. So the reason I talk about these Buddhist traditions and what these meditation techniques are is because I think we very easily, by secularizing traditions, we lose sometimes some of the most basic teachings that come with meditation techniques and their purpose. And then people lose direction. But, if you're doing something with your mind, I'm very cautious about, recommending even Zen. Zen isn't for everybody. So it's very important for each of us to be really responsible for our own mind training, so to speak. I would also like to add that Zen is not a path to try to fix any, for instance, mental disorders or mental illnesses. If you have a diagnosis or have a tendency or suspect that there are some issues, then it's very important to talk to your doctor, your physician, about doing any kind of meditation practice before doing it, right? And it's not a cure-all for any kind of medical illness either. But if you do practice and understand yourself a little better, I think we can all make better choices and decisions with a little more wisdom. And some of those things in our life can change.
Thank you for providing that.
Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. I even had some interviews about Zen before, and I explored the topic a little bit, but that was the first time that someone shared the purpose of Zen with me, which is probably the most important thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But mind you, also in Zen, the one thing I could also add is within Zen, of course, in modern times, the tradition itself has also morphed, emorphed into various forms. And sometimes some part of it is what we call secular Zen or common people Zen. So when we talk about, let's say, Zen lifestyle or, decluttering, or how we use Zen concepts for simplifying or making our life better, all of those are also very good. And they all do come from the original Zen tradition. So common people Zen means you can take the practice of, let's say, decluttering your house or your office, right? Is the same as decluttering our mind. So why not start here? Then, of course, decluttering your room or your kitchen or your life situations is a part of how we manifest our mental health and well-being with the environment around us. That's how we change what we call our karma. Yeah. So you can burn it from both ends. You can start meditation. So let's say you have an incense stick, right? So you start burning the incense stick here by decluttering your house, or maybe looking at your food. How do I eat my food? How do I consume, and you want to make some changes, right? Our daily life habits. So we start with that in the outer form, right? Yeah. And then at the same time, we look at our life and do some practice, some meditation, and look inside. What am I? Don't know. But curious to look inside is don't know. So if we go both ways, then you burn this karma faster. They meet together. Yeah. So inside, outside become one, then boom, some wisdom comes out of it. If we only do outside, only declutter, but still do a lot of crappy decision making, don't change the way we think, we don't want to work on our inner work, then it takes longer. Right? Yeah. So use everything. Nowadays, we're so fortunate because actually there's so much out there being done by a lot of people, religious or not, spiritual or not, who strive to make their lives better one way or the other. Yeah. Whether it's time management, health, how to keep your space, how to work better, how to save time. All of these things I think are very useful if we have a very clear direction about how to use them in our life, and become more clear and more effective to benefit ourselves and others.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And you mentioned already the meditation. And do you want to give a little bit of perspective on what is foundational to the meditation in Zen, or how does that fit into all or the regular practices of Zen?
Meditation is in sitting meditation. So in Zen traditions, sitting is a very central part of our practice because it means by parking your body in a posture and not moving for some time is an experience that can really help us see our mind. So human body is it's designed to always actually move, right? We have 4 limbs, and usually we're always doing something in movement. When we sit, of course, or sleep, we're not moving, so to speak, but the intent of the human body is that it's functioning constantly, right? So sitting is an activity where you stop everything, then it's a little bit easier to see how our mind is moving. Because when we're always physically moving, we cannot see clearly our mind moving. So we might be physically, washing the dishes, but my mind is, in South Africa, thinking about crocodiles, whatever. Right? Or, so usually the mind and the body, not always in the same place. So when we sit, because your body isn't going anywhere, it's the experience that helps us see our mind go. So it's like we have this famous teaching called the 10 ox herding pictures. And basically it's the story of a little boy and his ox, and the ox runs away. So the boy is chasing, looking for the ox, right? So it's about taming the ox, we say. So our mind is running around all the time, coming up with lots of thoughts. It goes to the past, it goes to the future, it's thinking about tomorrow's work, yesterday's dinner. It's doing many, many things, flying all over the place. Sometimes that's not even my thinking. Maybe you just pick up what somebody else is saying, or we hear some music or some news, and then it becomes like a salad, like in our consciousness, So mind can do anything. So what's important is then, who is the host of this mind? Who is the host of, this moment? So sitting is a practice that really helps us to see that happening. Okay. And then we have other practices like bowing practice, prostrations, also chanting. So chanting is a wonderful practice in many traditions and even in different world religions, because chanting or singing is the way we express our emotions. And so it's a kind of practice of purification in a way, so to speak, of our emotions, emotional energy. So when we chant in Zen, you chant each syllable very clearly. You become one with the sound. So if you chant with a group, then the group's voice, your own voice, you hear it. And if you only hear yourself, that means you're too loud. But if you hear everyone's voice and your own together as one, that's harmony. And because sound is a vibration, when we chant, then oftentimes chanting is a way for us to send or share our practicing energy for those who need it. Like if you have a loved one who's ill, or somebody's passed away, we have various chants we can do through rituals that are the kind of experiences as a practitioner that you can have, where you can actually release those feelings or residues about the person or the situation. And of course, that's in a way a function of religion itself, is to capture the minds and hearts of people so their sorrows or griefs are processed in some way. And bowing is a practice that we do, prostrations, where you go down on all fours on the cushion and come back up. And different traditions, of course, in Buddhism have bowing practices. In Zen, bowing means completely take away I, my, me. So, when you go down on a mat, your forehead touches the mat. So that means a humble mind. That means take away this ego. In this moment, my head touches the ground, right? And then come back, stand like Buddha. And then again, go down, forehead touches the mat, then come back up like Buddha. So we usually do the first thing in the morning in a Zen center, or individuals who practice in our tradition, we start with 108 bows first thing in the morning. And after we do the bows, we might do some chanting, and then some sitting. So those three practices together are a kind of complete, as I said, intellectual thinking, energy, emotional energy, and also confidence, do it energy. These three energies come together by doing these three basic practices of meditation. The bowing technique also, it's very interesting because bowing has been around for so long since in many cultures and in many religions. And doing it first thing in the morning is, now I see its tremendous value, because when we wake up in the morning, neuroscience has taught us that our cortisol level is at its highest in the morning. So that means when we wake up from dream state, from sleep and dream state, our cortisol, our stress hormone goes up. Your consciousness wakes up. So we say then our karma is also strong in the morning. So you might feel groggy, but all those thoughts that are good or bad habits, they come up from our subconscious. So when strong karma appears, when, let's say, strong anger or strong emotions or depressed feelings, things like that appear, we always recommend bowing to people, because it just starts get your body moving, right? It's like doing yoga or doing some exercise is usually greatly beneficial to move that energy. So bowing in a way is, it's not an exercise. It's more of almost a mental practice. It's something happens when you do these bows, and it's cathartic. It just brings your body and mind together. So I highly recommend bowing if you don't have time to sit.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Yeah. I will give that a try. Like, that's something I have not done so far in my life. Maybe it's time.
Well, I would say, I can safely say bowing is the least attractive practice for many Westerners. Because it's also, in a way, another cultural hurdle. And I think what's valuable about bowing is when we really see the true meaning of it, of really letting go of our ego, letting go of our mind's attachment to this I. Yeah. So it's a good experience.
Yeah, I'm sure. I will report on that one. And then if I may ask, there's also the practice of koans, right? Part of Zen. Where does that fit into the picture?
Well, let me ask you, what's the sound of one hand clapping? There's a koan for you.
Yeah, I even reflected on that one before. Yeah, shall I try to answer, or no?
Well, you didn't have one, so time already passed. You missed the moment.
Yeah.
So koan is very simple. It's if you go to, I don't know, your favorite coffee shop, maybe you already have your favorite coffee all the time, right? If you drink coffee.
I sometimes do. Yes, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I don't drink coffee myself. And sometimes I'll go to a coffee shop, and because I have to meet someone or whatever. And I'm like, what do I drink? Don't know. It's a koan. Whole world is, going through climate change. All these things are happening in the world. Do I fly? next month on this trip that somebody invited me to? Don't know. It's a koan. So a koan is our life, actually. It's not anything special. It's actually all those moments that come up in our life where we don't have an answer. Sometimes it's in the workplace, when, you thought you did the right thing, but your boss told you that you were terrible and you did the wrong thing, right? What is this? So Zen is like meeting the moment, meeting that situation with courage. That's what koan is. But many koans appeared in Zen tradition over time because in Zen history, originally, of course, most practitioners were monks in the monasteries in China or in Korea even. And so they have a very simple lifestyle. You just go to the monastery 3 months in the summer, 3 months in the winter. You just sit meditation and have this question, what am I? And then over the Zen history, there were periods where some great teachers realized, they need a little bit more push. They need something a little bit more. So koans appear to help the student become more sincere, become more introspective. So one wonderful koan I can share with you today is a very famous one in Zen tradition. It's called Namchun's Cat. So Zen Master Namchun was a very famous teacher. And he had a big monastery in China. And one side of the temple had 250 monks living there practicing. The other side, another building of 250 monks. So 500 monks came to practice study with him. Then they're sitting, every day, 10, 12 hours meditation, looking at the wall. You can imagine it can get kind of boring. No internet, no TV at that time. Even their life is very simple. So then this question, or when we sit, of course, then many things appear in our mind. Then your desire, your anger, your ignorance can make many, many things. Right? So all kinds of interesting things appear. So what happened? There was a cat in the temple. And some of these monks, they start playing with the cat. They love this cat. So the monks from both wings, they start playing with the cat and then they start fighting. This is our cat. No, this is our cat. We have to have him today. No, this is our cat. So become problem in the temple. Then Namchun, he realized what was happening. And one day he called everybody out to the courtyard. And the assembly got gathered. Then he took out his precept knife. So precept knife is a knife that a Zen teacher or a monk, head monk of the temple will carry around, because when the monks get ordained, they use a knife in those days to shave their heads. So it's a symbolic tool. He pulled out the knife. He pulled the cat up. And he said, all of you, give me one word or I'm going to kill this cat. Then everybody was silent. Nobody said anything. Then he took the precept knife and cut the cat. Blood, cat died. Then that night, his best student is a famous monk called Joju. Joju is a famous character in Zen history. Joju came back. He had an errand in another temple. He came back. He came back to Namchun. His teacher says, Master, anything happened today? Then Namchun said, oh, you wouldn't believe what happened. This and this happened, and, I had to kill the cat. Then Namchun, in those days, they were wearing grass shoes. Like the shoes the monks wore were woven like twine. Yeah, they were not leather, or fabric. They were made of twine. And so he took his shoes off and he put it on his head and then he walked off. So that's the end of the story. So the koan here, is, if you were there, if you were one of those monks, how would you save this cat?
How I would have saved that cat.
Yes, if you were one of those monks in that temple, when Namchon held up the cat and says, "You, give me one word, or I will kill this cat." What can you do? Are you laughing? The cat is dead.
No, I'm not laughing. I'm crying.
Yeah. So this koan is called a great love, great compassion koan. So if you get that, if you attain it, this is a wonderful, wonderful experience of our life you can use. Okay. So koans are not special. They appeared actually in everyday life situations like that. Okay. And even nowadays, you know, a koan can be invented in the interview room by the teacher. Yeah. Sometimes even a student can bring the koan. So one great koan in our school is actually from a young child. So many years ago, when our teacher Zen Master Sung San was teaching in Paris at our Zen center there at the time, there was a man who was coming to practice there, a Frenchman, and he was coming for interviews. And then one day, he came to Zen Master Sung San and said, "I have a problem. My daughter, who's maybe 6 or 7 at the time, I don't remember, she always asks me after I come back from the Zen Center, 'What did you learn there, Daddy?' And he would say, 'Oh, today Zen Master Sung San gave this kind of talk, and he talked about, you know, cause and effect or whatever.' He's, you know, he would always tell his daughter what he learned and what he did. And so then one day, he told his daughter about the koan interviews, I guess, and how the teacher asked him, what is Buddha, things like that. And then one day he and his daughter were walking, and the daughter said to him, "Daddy, why is the sky blue?" And the father had no answer because it was a koan to him. He got a don't know. So he came back and said to Zen Master Sung San, "My daughter is a Zen master because she asked me a koan I couldn't answer. Why is the sky blue?" So Zen Master Sung San laughed and said, "She's a great Zen student." So why is the sky blue became a classic koan in the quantum tradition. Okay. So most of these so-called koan questions are not questions that can be answered logically. You don't have a logical answer to it. Okay. It's before thinking. So before logic. So that means we are looking inside to our deeper wisdom. So if we can experience a moment of before thinking, okay, when your mind doesn't hold some opinion, some like or dislike, okay, some concept. And we actually experience it all the time, but we lose it or we forget. And we immediately, as you said, we clutch to some concept or knowing something which gives us a false sense of security because that's all we know. But actually, it's a limitation because we hold on to what we know and it doesn't leave room for don't know. So koans are a technique to help us return to that before thinking experience, which you can have on your cushion or in your daily life in any situation. And the interview room is a kind of safe place, a setup to help you train that, right?
That makes a lot of sense intuitively, and I will contemplate on the one with the cat. Yeah.
Yes, do that.
That's a good one. Yeah. Yeah. Katie, thank you so much for jumping on this conversation and sharing from your incredible wisdom with us. Thank you so much for taking the time. I don't know, is there something else you want to share which you think might be important, or you want to share with our listeners? You don't have to.
Let's see. I think one thing that could be really helpful is when I did my first retreat, as I mentioned to you earlier, years ago, I first experienced the value of keeping silence. So for 5 days or for 90 days, when we do retreats, we keep silence. So it means we don't talk. And I was mentioning earlier that I wasn't a very verbally adept person before, articulating person. And I have to say that using the practice and then being able to learn how to keep silence through retreats and practices, I found my voice. So it's a kind of paradox in a way, because nowadays we all want to be heard. And people are shouting out themselves to the world, and we can't get enough. And of course, there's too much noise at the same time. So if there's one thing I would like to recommend is that, and as I said, Zen isn't necessarily for everybody, but even if you practice like a day of silence once a week, but that means like even not looking at your mobile phone. Silence as in like the silence from concepts, silence from media or information or absorption of concepts. I found that to be hugely nourishing and very important in our day and time, because we're mostly physically and mentally tired. Many people come to meditation and the first thing that happens to them is they get tired and they fall asleep while sitting. Yeah. So it's coming from a lot of mental and just emotional tiredness of being just oversaturated with data and information from all senses. And we don't even see how that's sort of building up. And so a buildup of that, I think, lots of obviously great scientists and also experts out there are talking about this. But in terms of the human mind, or the degeneration of human mind itself is a part of this whole thing that's happening. As we learn to use devices, we are also very much caught up in what the devices are doing to us, right? So I think it's really important for us to really carve out for ourselves this time of what I call silence, like being able to sit quietly or being able to refrain from a lot of data and information. And if you really, really do that, then you can hear better, you can listen better. And then something we want to say also becomes more clear. That's just been my experience over time. So I encourage that. If we want to be more clear or more creative, even in our work, it's really important to digest what we experience or hear or understand, so it becomes wisdom for us. But that's, I think, lacking. I think more people have more information to share.
Yeah,
so that's what I would suggest, that how to find ways to digest what you already know. Then that leaves room for more clarity and information to support our growth, whatever it is you do.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that I couldn't agree more. That's I think the challenge with that access to incredible amounts of information, to not get drawn into or get lost into that sea of information and be in the end very confused. Yeah. Katie, thank you so much for
my pleasure.
The wisdom you shared with us. Yeah, it was a very helpful,
you're too kind.
Interesting insight into the world of Zen. Thank you so much. Yeah,
my pleasure. Thank you for having me, and even for listening and being curious about it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was my true joy. And of course, also to everybody who's listening and watching this, thank you so much for your curiosity. I wish you all the best and look forward to the next episode. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
What's my potential? What's really inside me? Is it possible to be joyful and to express who I truly am? Do I have unique gifts and talents? And if I do, how do I find them? And if I find them, how do I bring them into life? And is it even possible to make a living from what I actually love to do? Those were some of the questions which drove me now more than a decade. And I don't want to give you a definitive answer, but I learned very valuable principles on my quest that helped me to discover who I am and to bring what I am actually into this life, beyond expectations, beyond conditioning, beyond limiting or self-defeating negative thoughts. And now I want to be the bridge and pass those principles on to you. And not only remind you with my words, but actually enable you to discover and experience that for yourself, real self-discovery, that you are a wonderfully creative being, a genius in the true sense of the word, and you have the potential and the possibility to unfold what is actually in you and set yourself creatively free. This is my mission. Very important, please don't believe my words or possibly your own skeptical thoughts, but check it out, experience it for yourself, and take part in our next seminar, Structural Creativity. More information here. I'm really looking forward to set your creativity free.